This is Christopher Nolan whenever he does anything movie related.
I will give you a show like you have never, ever seen before. Why? Because I can.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, here with my brief thoughts on Oppenheimer. This was directed by Christopher Nolan. It was also written by him, and this is based on the book American Prometheus about the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer. You may have heard of him. He only created one of the most devastating weapons in human history, the atomic bomb. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. J. Robert Oppenheimer created that. This movie basically captures a snapshot of J. Robert Oppenheimer's life from just before World War II up through the Manhattan Project and then the immediate aftermath, in which, despite being a well-respected scientist and beloved, there are people who, well, have a vested interest in seeing him taken down a peg and have his reputation ruined. And Christopher Nolan tells that story in only a way that Nolan can. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but the summer movie season has been kind of mediocre. I've been leaving more disappointed than I would have liked to have been lately, but if there was one hope, one shining light in the darkness, it was going to be Christopher Nolan. He's one of my favorite directors going today. Tenet was not great, but the rest of his filmography is really good. So, hey, not everyone is ever bat 1,000. I was very confident in Oppenheimer. And 3 hours and 15 minutes later, 3-hour runtime plus 15 minutes of trailers. Yeah, this movie rocked. I can confidently say, even though it's still fresh in my head, this movie is in my top 5 of the year. Is it number 1? I honestly don't know. But as of right now, it's easily in the top 5, maybe top 3. First and foremost, though, the performances in this movie across the board are excellent. Really, the standouts are the ones you've probably heard the most about, your Cillian Murphys, your Robert Downey Jr.'s, and they're both pretty much the standouts of the movie. Cillian Murphy, I've been a fan of him for a while now. We all talk about Michael Caine as being the go-to Nolan guy, but we all kind of forget that Cillian Murphy has been in a lot of Nolan's movies. He was Scarecrow in the Dark Knight trilogy. He was one of the soldiers in Dunkirk. So yeah, Cillian Murphy has been there for a lot of Nolan's films, and he is the bona fide star in this, and he gives a fantastic performance. Cillian Murphy, just in general, is a really good actor. From 28 Days Later to Peaky Blinders and everything in between. Robert Downey Jr. shows that he is not just Iron Man, and while he was very good as Iron Man and the definitive casting for that role, the dude showed up and he showed out. Really, his involvement in the movie is shown in mostly flashbacks or flash forwards. Because of Nolan's nonlinear storytelling, it's a little hard to tell, to be honest. But Robert Downey Jr. shows up to work, and he really brings it here. Really, it's interesting the dynamic between Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. as J. Robert Oppenheimer and Lewis Strauss, respectively. The best I can describe the relationship here is Mozart and Salieri from one of my favorite movies of all time, Amadeus. J. Robert Oppenheimer is the genius. He gets all the praise and all the glory, but he is far more flawed than Lewis Strauss. Lewis Strauss basically is a self-made man. He bootstrapped his way through everything. He made his own money, did it all his own way. And he felt slighted by J. Robert Oppenheimer. And even though his methods of going about trying to get his revenge are very dastardly, J. Robert Oppenheimer didn't really do himself a ton of favors. I'll talk more about that in just a minute, but the rest of the performances in the movie, I feel like Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. are going to be the ones that people talk about the most, and the rest are going to be put to the side. I hope that doesn't happen because the rest of the cast really did bring it. You got Matt Damon, you got Dane DeHaan, who I had no idea was in the movie, but he was really good. Josh Peck, yes, from Drake and Josh, was in this movie. I did not expect to see him here. He was good. Dylan Bostic from Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roderick Rules, is in this movie, and he's good in his brief role. Kenneth Branagh is in this movie as Niels Bohr. Just the movie is loaded with more actors that to be like, oh yeah, I know him. Just not just Christopher Nolan's go-to guys, but guys you would never expect. One of the fun things I did was just noticing people that I had seen, whether they were a Nolan guy or not, like Matt Modine from Full Metal Jacket. He was in The Dark Knight Rises, and he was in this movie too. Nice to see him. And what's especially awesome is that everyone in the acting department is just giving their full 100%, and it was awesome to see. Before I move on, I don't want to forget about Emily Blunt. She was really good too. As Kitty Oppenheimer, she had more than a few good scenes. And I also want to bring up Jason Clarke because he plays one of the senators, kind of grilling Oppenheimer in that whole court case. You're going to know it when you see it. And he was great. Jason Clarke is a pretty underrated actor, and he really gives some of his finest work right here. The discussion going into the movie was about the explosions and what Nolan was going to do about it. And yeah, the explosions do happen, and they are fantastic. Really, this movie is more of a character drama about the creation of the atomic bomb itself, not about the atomic bomb itself. The Manhattan Project is just a segment of this really long 3-hour movie that's just, it feels epic. It feels appropriately epic. There are explosions, and when the explosions do in fact happen, they are genuinely jarring, but in the best way possible. Also, Nolan kind of plays around with some of the filmmaking techniques he does here to show just Oppenheimer's mental state going through this whole thing. There's a scene where it felt like a genuine jump scare, and it shook me. It really did. And I don't think that I was expecting it, but I mean that in the nicest way possible. But while this movie is about J. Robert Oppenheimer creating the atomic bomb, there's a lot more to unpack with this movie. Basically, it's a biopic about Oppenheimer himself. It basically starts out in his days in university and basically covers about, say, 30 to 40 years in that amount of time. And it covers quite a bit, from Oppenheimer's meeting of Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein to his journey into quantum physics and being one of the first to really enter the field, to his sort of relationship with communism and that whole thing, to the Manhattan Project itself and how the US basically wanted a tight lid on everything, despite Oppenheimer insisting on having his own people there, despite them being, let's just say, not so trustworthy because of the whole communism thing, to the eventual creation of the bomb and the detonation of the bomb, and just Oppenheimer feeling like, well, as he famously said, I am become death, the destroyer of worlds, to the whole meeting with Lewis Strauss and Strauss trying to end this man's whole career. This movie covers all of that in the span of 3 hours. And I've often talked about how I am sick to the back teeth of movies that are 2.5, 3 hours long. However, I have tried my best to say that if the movie earns its runtime, then it earns its runtime. Nolan earned the 3 hours here. The movie feels suitably epic and really just, it doesn't really waste its time. Every moment matters. Every little thing to where you don't think it's going to be referenced again, it gets referenced again. And the movie really rewards you for paying attention. I'm sure you all probably guessed my grade, but yeah, this movie is pretty amazing. Is it my favorite of Nolan's? I still think it's Inception, but this is definitely in the conversation. This movie, the word an amazing achievement has been thrown around, or the phrase an amazing achievement has been thrown around. But yeah, this movie is an amazing achievement. It's both big in the right ways and small in the right ways. It's a really focused character study, and it's also a movie with a lot of really loud explosions. It's kind of a paradox, and I love it because of that. But I pass it off to all of you. What did you think of Oppenheimer? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read what you have to say. And if you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, click the bell to allow notifications, so when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam, and I'll see you in the next one.